All right, Kiss Army, welcome to the KissFAQ podcast. Thank you for giving us your time today and letting us into your head. I hope we don't do any damage. This is a Kiss-related podcast by the board, for the board. We hope that you enjoy.
All right, welcome to the KissFAQ podcast. I'm your host, Julian Gill. This is the last show of 2023. I want to thank Adam, North Carolina, Wade from Sacktown, Austin, Thomas, and hey, KissFAQ. Just welcome to the show. And I want to just start off this episode today by saying thank you to everyone who's here watching us live, to everyone who's joined us for part of an episode and hung up, or one episode, or however many episodes. I want to thank everyone who's joined us for an episode in 2023. But most importantly, personally, I want to thank you, Ken, Mark, Daniel, Lonnie, who's not here, Andrew, Andy, everyone who's participated on this side of the screen as well. You guys make my Thursdays, or whenever we do get together, much more fun because it's great to hang out with you and talk Kiss. I've really enjoyed doing these live shows this year because it's great to have a live audience to chime in and call us out when we're wrong. And also to participate in the conversation. And sometimes I get to cheat and just use the things that people are saying in the comments, and I'm set to go. So, I do want to thank everyone. I want to thank everyone also who is tuning in to Series 3 of the KissFAQ Song Story series. That did kick off on Christmas Day for the 12 days of Kissmas this year. So every day through January the 5th will be a new song story. If you can't handle checking them all out each day, you'll have plenty of material going forward to be able to go back and listen to. And you guys, you want to say anything, as we do our final show of 2023?
No, I just say, I ditto what you said, and plus, I just hope that we can continue onward here with this. But I gotta thank Kiss for giving us the amounts, lots and lots of subject matter to go over. Without Kiss, we would have never met at all. So I gotta thank Kiss. But I agree with you, Julian, the guys on the podcast and everyone that joins us here live and even listens to maybe 5 seconds of our show. It's all good. Wealth and prosperity, hopefully, to everyone out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, true that. You put it. You put it right out there. The perfect message. We do enjoy doing this together. We all enjoy each other's company, and we do enjoy when you chime in with your comments in the live episodes. I would also like to thank all the other Kiss podcasts that I truly enjoy, that they're still around. I mean, you have some podcasts that have been around for a long time, like Three Sides of the Coin and a few others. And I still find myself listening to them from time to time, and I really enjoy them. And I would also like to give a big thank you to you guys. Yes, we've said it before, but I also enjoy these meetings or these meetups that we do because there's no one around here that likes Kiss as much as I do. So this is my go-to thing when it comes to Kiss, and I hope we will continue for a few more years at least.
We shall see. Mark, you got anything?
None. I think everybody said all that needs to be said. I mean, I obviously second and third it, of course. I've been having a great time doing this, and I hope that we can continue doing it for a time to come still. It's been great fun doing it, and it will be interesting though to see how the dynamic of it as far as topic matter if it'll change or if it'll be the same now that Kiss is sort of in retirement mode now. So we'll see. I'm curious.
Nothing's going to change because I
No,
don't want to
probably not.
freaking talk about avatars when there's no information about what it'll be. Come on. And Daniel, thank you for mentioning the other podcast because, I've been on a lot of other shows this year, obviously with Masked Hysteria, Ages of Rock, Podcast Rock City, Podcast. I think we did, I can't remember this year or last, but we did do an old episode and got it going this year. Decibel Geek,
Yeah, I like that one.
There's a lot of good podcasts out there, and
I have to say, Decibel Geek podcast is one of the best around, but it's mainly because the how do you say it, the
dynamics.
The dynamics between the two guys running the show. I enjoy their talk with each other.
Their back and forth that they do.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just getting warm up to English. I haven't spoken English for a week, so I'm a bit off in the beginning of every. It's always the same at the beginning of every show. I'm a bit off, but I'll come around.
Yeah, Chris and Aaron are great people, and Three Sides as well. Had me on during the year, so thank you to all those other podcasts. We're not necessarily friends. Sometimes we compete with one another, but we're all talking about the same thing, and we've all come together because of this band. Let's get into today's topic. Ken and Daniel. Daniel, you came up with this, and Ken fleshed it out a bit.
I came up with the topic, and Ken totally changed it. So. No, he didn't totally change it, but
added on.
But in my mind, I was thinking, let the song go up against each other. But maybe that's going to. At times, I may go too deep into subjects, so it's good that Ken came in and told. Let's keep it simple. And Ken, what did you come up with?
Well, based on a list of Kiss albums from the 80s. You had some competition as far as other albums that they released during the same year. For instance, something like Creature of the Night would go up against, that was released in 82. We would put against another rock album, hard rock album of the same year, and that was released the same year, and kind of, put them up against each other and see what we think, who really wins that battle of those albums. So it's two different artists. It's not going to always be the same artist. It'll be Kiss against this or that artist for certain years. So we were looking at all of the Kiss's 80s albums, starting with Unmasked and ending with Hot in the Shade, and kind of gonna discuss those against whatever we came up with, and what we thought about, which album's the better one.
Yeah, so that's going to be really tough starting in 1980. And I did want to just give a shout out, the graphic of the albums. I was too lazy to put that together myself, and I just lifted that off excessrock.com, did a ranking of the Kiss 1980s albums. So thank you to them for probably taking 5 minutes that I couldn't be bothered to do to just do a quick collage of the album covers. Mark, 1980, Unmasked. Ken has selected it to go up against Back in Black, but let's just go around the table. When you think about an album to put Unmasked up against, I mean, I certainly would not be putting them against probably the top seed of 1980. That album, I'd try and get something with a little bit more of a chance to have a conversation.
Well, this is the thing. This is a perfect example of our friend Ken here, Mr. Optimistic, Mr. Loves Kiss till the very end. Delusionally thinks that Unmasked has any prayer in hell against Back in Black as a record, which it obviously has no prayer at all. Even though Unmasked is probably one of my albums that I got into later in the catalog, like later in collecting the catalog, and I really grown to love that album. But no matter how much I love that album, it just doesn't stand a chance against Back in Black. I mean, Back in Black is like, will always be remembered as one of the greatest rock records of all time. I mean, that's sold. I think it's a diamond record here in Canada, which is like very rare to sell that many albums here in Canada. And I think, I don't even think that Unmasked sold gravel in Canada, compared to that, So, but that's but that's not neither here or there. I mean, I still love the album regardless. But I think that it was also two different kind of mentalities at the time. I mean, you're talking about a band that lost a lead singer, got a new guy in, and had to make a record of their career to get back on track, so that they wouldn't lose, their fan base, because they did do a great record, Highway to Hell, before that. And then next thing you know, they had to come up with even a better record to kind of convince people that they weren't done without Bon, right? And then you have Kiss, who were kind of, sitting on their laurels after getting a huge record contract, and they were sitting good, they were all rich all of a sudden, and then they didn't put as much effort into it as they probably could have. If there was a bit more urgency in their writing, then who knows how Unmasked could have turned out.
Daniel, what would you be going with other than Back in Black?
Well, Unmasked was never one of my favorite Kiss albums to start off things with, but and against Back in Black, it doesn't stand a chance in hell. But I think AC/DC put out Back in Black, but not a long time after that, they started to lose their grip as well. And I think the last album that I enjoyed from AC/DC was probably that one from 1990 with Thunderstruck. What was it?
Razor's Edge.
Yeah, Razor's Edge. I think
Right.
that was the last album that I really enjoyed from AC/DC. So, but Back in Black is such a great album. That wasn't me, by the way.
Sorry.
It's a great album, and Unmasked is one of from my point of view, it's one of the weaker Kiss albums. I never liked the production. I never liked the pop thing that they went for. I think they, dropped the balls somewhat. And, while there still are some good songs on the album, like Magic Touch and maybe a few others, Back in Black is a whole lot better. But when
Magic Touch is on Dynasty.
Yeah, that's true. So there probably ain't any good songs on Unmasked whatsoever. No, it's never been one of my favorites. And I often mix up Dynasty and Unmasked because those two albums are pretty similar, and Unmasked is the weaker one of them. But I have to say that this was a low point for Kiss from my point of view, and Back in Black is a pretty good album. So Back in Black for me. And when I compared the albums, I picked out a Motley Crue album, and I just looked at which album sold the most. And when I saw the numbers the Motley Crue album did, I thought, well, I'm not sure that's better than the album Kiss released. But 1980, Kiss didn't release any good material compared to AC/DC's, so 1980 goes to the other bands, but I think Kiss might win some of these years, but not 1980.
Yeah, we'll have to see. And Jake, I just started looking at other albums released in 1980. So the way I kind of look at this, rather than putting it up against Back in Black, I mean, that's basically putting a toddler up against Mike Tyson in 1986. It's just going to get a whooping. So Ted Nugent, he'd been around since putting out albums solo since 74. And he had Scream Dream, which is not a very good album. Cultosaurus Erectus, Blue Oyster Cult, they've been around. Obviously. Ken, you've been digging into that doesn't help the conversation. Thank you. Animal Magnetism, Scorpions, they've been around for a while. That to me is not one of their better albums. I can't go on through the night because that was their first album, so they're not established. Judas Priest, British Steel, that's as bad as putting it up against Back in Black. So basically, there's no way Unmasked is beating anything essentially released in 1980. There's just no way for me to spin that around. They were lost, they were confused, and they were going in a completely different direction and hadn't figured out yet that they were going in the wrong direction. So Back in Black, forget it. Ken?
Yeah, and just to say, I'm not such a Kiss fan that I would say, Unmasked is better than Back in Black. As like, Back in Black is one of my favorite all-time albums. And it kills. It's a great album. While Unmasked is okay, it's not one of my favorite Kiss albums. there's, obviously they lost their way a little bit there. But I think some of these other matchups that we're going to see coming along here are a little bit more evenly matched to a degree. And we'll see, who we pick on those.
Yeah. 1980. I mean, I just want to read off some of these albums that were released. We've had Ace of Spades mentioned, British Steel, Heaven and Hell, Black Sabbath, Blizzard of Oz, Iron Maiden, Witchfind, Give 'Em Hell.
Women and Children First.
Yeah. Macaulay Schenker Group. After he didn't work out with Aerosmith, he went and did
Genesis.
his Ready and Willing. Great. Fantastic. Whitesnake album, Permanent Waves, Dead Kennedys. Bad Reputation, Loverboy. I mean,
Peter Gabriel 3.
Queen, The Game. Now that's interesting.
But I think the comparison between AC/DC and Kiss is pretty interesting because they went so separate ways. Kiss tried to follow the trends. AC/DC never did. They almost released the same album year after year.
Stayed on their own trend.
Last 20 years.
So I'm just wondering, Mark, you as a musician, would you have preferred Kiss to stay with the, let's say, Hotter Than Hell, just the Kiss album, the first album, Hotter Than Hell, that sound all the way through the career, or do you enjoy the way they, followed trends and try to put out different sounding albums?
This is an interesting question because one of my favorite band in the world is Rush, and Rush has been a band that has went throughout their career changing their sound. They started out sort of Led Zeppelin-ish, then they started getting a bit more proggy, then really proggy, then they kind of toned it down a little bit more commercial, then they went heavy on the keyboards, and they stripped the keyboards. Like they did a bunch of stuff, and they were constantly changing. That was the whole true definition of a progressive band. Now, like AC/DC has written the same record probably since the start, with little modifications here and there. And Kiss, when they came out with their albums at the beginning, a lot of people dug their music from the beginning. The first 3 records, especially, the first album is a classic, right? It just doesn't sound very good. And then that was solved by Alive, which showed that those songs are fantastic, but in a live environment, they really showed their strength, right? So with them, it's kind of difficult because on one hand, you want to go with the music that brought you to them, right? And that was the music that I got into, that, and Lick It Up as well. Like if you Lick It Up was right around the time when I really started getting serious into music when I was younger, right? And if you think about it, I think somebody even on this stream even said once that Lick It Up was like almost like a sister record to one of the older records. But
yeah, Love Gun.
Yeah, so there's that similarity with it, right? But look what happens when Kiss tries to go off the beaten track. They do The Elder, and it's not good. People don't respond to it well. They do Destroyer, which is just horrendous, and that people responded not well with it at the beginning either. They responded better with it later, right? As we all know, and that's proof. There's lots of evidence of that's true, right? But would I have preferred that they stayed with the way that they were? Well, I love Rock and Roll Over. If they continued their career writing songs along that lines, I don't think I would have been too disappointed with it, because that's the thing. I have a lot of other bands I listen to as well that I could, if I needed something different, like something more progressive, I would go to a different band. I wouldn't expect it from Kiss,
I think I enjoy I like the way they did it. Different styles, different eras. That way I can find anything I would like to listen to in the Kiss catalog. But I can't argue against putting out Rock and Roll Over each and every year. A version of that would be pretty cool as well.
Yep. But that's what some Kiss fans would have wanted, the same album over and over and over. Let's move into 1981, because it was clear that 1980 was a complete mismatch. 1981 gets a little bit easier. Ken, what did you select to go up against music from The Elder?
On this one, I selected Moving Pictures by Rush, Mark's favorite band, of course, because both albums I would be considered the progressive side of rock. I think the Kiss is kind of progressive, The Elder. And then Moving Pictures, and here's Lonnie, by the way.
Hey, Lonnie.
Hello. What's up?
Hello.
I didn't think
Hello,
I'd
Lonnie.
make it. End of the
Merry
year
Christmas.
bullshit. Merry Christmas. That's why I didn't reply to the scan. That's why I didn't reply all week because I didn't think there's any chance.
So you had to go to work, I guess.
Yeah, I got a freaking no. Every one of my friends and family is off this week except for me.
Listen, that
It's,
sucks.
it's goddamn insane how you do over there. I
So
have
Merry
20.
Christmas.
Yeah, I had 20 days off.
Huh. I don't like people
Over here
who
in
brag.
Ladies
Brag.
and gentlemen, would everyone like to
Fucking
flip patio
socialist.
at the same time? All right, so getting Lonnie up to speed, we just determined that Unmasked is better than Back in Black.
No,
No,
I gotta
so let's
go.
move on.
I got to go back to work.
Yeah, Ken's just setting up 1981, which is going to be music from The Elder versus an album Mark doesn't like very much.
Moving pictures of Rush.
I love moving pictures. Let me just get my opinion out of the way right now.
Okay, here we go.
So moving pictures is by far one of their strongest records of all time. It's not my number one Rush record, but it is definitely the record that made Rush a household name. The record that they did one of their longest tours on, had so many fantastic singles off it. Tom Sawyer, Limelight, the Red Barchetta, YYZ. There's so many stuff. Side A is like a complete classic, just beginning to end. I mean, the whole album is fantastic, And music from The Elder is just another complete mess by our good friend Bob Ezrin, and it's just not to put this in the same category is a complete insult to Rush. It's just absolute garbage compared to what Rush put out. I mean, Terry Brown really, if you were to compare it just by producers, I'm telling you, Terry Brown would have put Bob Ezrin over his knee and completely slapped the hell out of him in production skills at that point. Okay, that album is much better, just way better tunes written, and to me, there's absolutely no contest at all in this.
Well,
I think I just messed things up.
Why?
what? What
Can you
did
hear
you do?
I hear
What do
you.
you do?
Yeah, there's.
What's wrong?
I'm just taking audio in the middle of the show. So, moving pictures. I mean, I just want to read off some of the other albums that were released in 1981. High and Dry, Fire of a Madman, Too Fast for Love, For Those About to Rock. Point of Entry. Now that's one that I think it could go up against more fairly. Fair Warning.
Yeah.
Fire of Unknown Origin. No way it's going anywhere near that. Come and Get It. White Snake. That's, kind of here nor there. But Moving Pictures is kind of perfection in form. So there's no way that The Elder gets anywhere near that for me, Ken.
Yeah, well, I picked Moving Pictures again, progressive kind of thing because I think The Elder is somewhat progressive, not as in the Rush progressive league, I guess. But for me, I like The Elder. I like The Elder better than Moving. I think Moving Pictures is a great album, but The Elder is just so unique. I guess for Kiss, of course, but I like the music on it. I like the music on The Elder. I think it's really cool, and I've listened to it a bunch more times than Moving Pictures. Now, back in the day, Rush back then was like my number 2 band, right behind Kiss. They've fallen off for me. They're kind of now probably in the, I don't know, above 5 or somewhere, between 5 and 10 for me. But back then, I think the quintessential Rush stuff is like Hemispheres and that sort of stuff. 2112. I mean, that's the stuff that I thought was the greatest Rush stuff. So they kind of fell off for me shortly after, a couple albums after, probably after Grace Under Pressure. They kind of fell. They really fell off. They really did. But I think The Elder is better for me, at least for me, of course. It didn't sell anything, didn't make a hit, it didn't really do anything, but I like it. I like The Elder. I've always liked it.
Yep.
Even from the beginning, I thought it was a strange thing, you know, I was hearing, but I enjoyed it. I really did.
Sometimes I wonder, is there a Kiss album that you dislike?
I know. Is there anything?
Well, I picked Back in Black over.
Yeah, but you still love Unmasked.
Is there? No, there's albums that I don't care for too much. I mean but The Elder's not one of them. I think Crazy Nights I don't care too much for, and Hot in the Shade maybe.
Even Paul Stanley would have picked Back in Black over Unmasked per his.
I don't know.
His
no way.
Two favorite albums in the Kiss catalog are Unmasked and Music from the Elder. I guess he forgot about Carnival of Souls.
Lonnie?
Well, if I can go next, I have to say, Rush never impressed me. Rush was never big over here. First time I saw Geddy Lee, I thought about my old high school teacher trying to look cool with a bass guitar. It didn't work. When I heard him sing, didn't like the way he sounded. He sure as hell was no Paul Stanley. And
he's much better.
The thing I enjoyed most watching a Rush concert online or listening to an album was the drumming, of course, when Neil Peart or Peart, however you say it. Yeah, there's different versions. Some say it one way and some say it the other way. But Peart, I think, is how you say it. Yeah, and his drum solo is actually the one thing I enjoy when watching a Rush concert. And I never got the Rush thing. So even though The Elder is one of my least favorite Kiss albums, I have to vote for The Elder. Sorry, Mark.
You guys are insane.
Yes, probably. Perfect. But I never got through that album. I never got through that Rush album. Start off with some strange keyboard thing.
Tom Sawyer is like one of the most known songs ever from Rush.
I hate it every time Sebastian Bach does his cover of Tom Sawyer. It's just a waste of time.
Well,
play Youth Gone Wild and
you
other
have no
stuff.
business doing a Rush song. Okay?
No, because it sucks.
Please. It's better than any Skid Row song that was ever put out.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay, Lonnie.
You're up, Lonnie. Impress me. Come on.
I'm not a big Rush guy either.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
So, and I've tried, and I've kept my. Honestly, I know Mark. We all know Mark's a big Rush guy. Canada, the whole thing, and I never have been able to get into Rush. The radio station here plays the hell out of Rush, way too damn much. And Austin, who's on the chat here, I know he can agree with me. They play Rush like it's the latest and greatest thing.
Yeah, but which do they play a lot of Rush songs, or do they play the same Rush song a lot?
They play a lot
Tom
of
Sawyer.
Rush songs. They play Tom Sawyer, but they play a lot of Rush songs. And
St. Louis, right?
Yes, sir. It's KC95 in St. Louis, KC Kite Festival. So
yeah.
So I've tried over the years. I have a couple Rush albums, and I thought I can get into it, and I can't. So as much as I have tried, The Elder takes the prize for me. Now, had we put up something other than Rush against The Elder, if we had put up Diary of a Madman or something like that, I would have picked Diary of a Madman hands down. I absolutely love that album. And I think there's a lot of other cool things going on in 1981, also with Too Fast for Love and For Those About the Rock, among others. But in this case, in this comparison, I'm definitely taking Music from The Elder.
Sorry, Mark. And by the way, those mid-1980s Rush albums are a hard listen.
For you.
Oh, yeah, hold your fire. Yeah.
I love that album.
Yeah. We did a podcast on that once, remember? Or was that
we
Presto?
Did it on Presto, yeah.
Oh, we'll have to go back. I think we should do some of the mid-1980s albums then, because that'd be interesting.
Oh, all right, let's do 70s.
Yeah, let's move forward into 1982. Some of the other albums that were released that year include Screaming for Vengeance, Number of the Beast, Black Metal by Venom, Blackout, let's see, Diver Down, Straight Between the Eyes, Rainbow, Speak of the Devil, Oh, it's one of my all-time favorite live albums. Talk of the Devil for Europeans. Under the Blade, Twisted Sister.
Yeah, that was a good one.
I'm kind of cherry picking here. Yeah, Merciful Fate.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some pretty strong competition right there. Number of the Beast, Creatures of the Night, Screaming for Vengeance, and the Scorpions. What did you match us up against, Ken?
So for Creatures of the Night, our matchup is Screaming for Vengeance by Judas Priest.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really
It's a little more of a even, semi-even, matchup, I think.
Let's see what Mark thinks first, because that's about as far as way you can get from Rush.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously I like both bands. I mean, obviously I love Kiss and I love Judas Priest. The thing with Judas Priest, and I'll be upfront about this from the very beginning. Judas Priest was a band that fell into this formula: shit album, good album, shit album, good album, shit album, good album. Yeah, they would do like Point of Entry, which was garbage, and then they would do like a better record. Then they always had that kind of thing in there going on. They had weak records. Come on, like Ram It Down is a horrible record. Okay, that's like the worst thing that they ever put to tape. Yeah, and same thing with like Turbo was like, come on, that was just lame. Okay, but then when they did like Painkiller, I mean, Old Bets Are Off. That album is like unbelievable.
Yeah.
And same with British Steel. I love British Steel. Didn't like Point of Entry. I like Screaming for Vengeance. Defenders of the Fate, it's okay, but it's not anywhere near as good as Screaming for Vengeance. Mm-hmm. Okay, they always had that kind of let's do a really good record and let's just phone one in for the next record. So for this competition here, Creatures of the Night has always been one of my favorite records. I've sung the praises of this album a lot on this podcast, not only because of the songs, but I think it has one of the best sonic productions I've ever heard on a record. It's unbelievable how this record sounds on a sound system, whether it's a normal sound system or a fantastic sound system. It sounds amazing, this album. Screaming for Vengeance, it's a good album, but I find that this album sonically doesn't hold to Creatures, in my opinion. The guitars on it are a little smooth for my liking. Judas Priest really improved their guitar tone as they went later in their career. I always found that it was a little too, borderline soft in spots, their tone. But the songs are great. I mean, You Got Another Thing Coming is great. Bloodstone is a great song. Electric Eye, all those things are really great on that album. But I think if you were to go song to song, production, everything, I think Creatures is still a better record in my opinion.
Lonnie, Screaming for Vengeance or Creatures?
Screaming for Vengeance is good, and I like Judas Priest. And it's very good. It is one of their better albums, but Creatures is so damn good. And this is a Kiss podcast. I'm not going to not pick Creatures of the Night. Come on. I mean, there have to be there wouldn't be many things that I could put up against Creatures of the Night, 1982 or not, that I'm not going to pick Creatures of the Night. I mean, that album is so damn good. The band sounds like it freaking should. It's heavy. It's in your face. It's everything a Kiss album should be, and even has a power ballad mixed in the middle of it. It is literally everything a Kiss album should be. It's heavy. And the songs are just damn good. It's an easy slam dunk pick. It's Creatures.
Daniel.
I do enjoy a lot of songs on the Judas Priest album, like Electric Eye. Screaming for Vengeance is of course good, and You've Got Another Thing Coming. Mm-hmm. But I have to say that Painkiller is my go-to Judas Priest album. I think that's my favorite. This is a good album, one of the better ones. But hey man, against Creatures of the Night. Creatures of the Night is probably the best sounding Kiss record of all time to my ears. And you can't compete with Creatures of the Night, I Love It Loud, Killer, I Still Love You is, Kiss's Nothing Else Matters. It's such a great song. Even though I don't really care for power ballads, but this one is so great, and the singing from Paul Stanley is awesome. And even though they used a lot of guest musicians, they really managed to put out one of the best albums ever. So Creatures of the Night beats Screaming for Vengeance for me.
Yeah, Creatures of the Night for me. And I play the Halen Electric Eye. That's like my go-to guitar jam because I just love powering through that rhythm. And I can even do one of the solos. Not very well. I'm probably playing it in the wrong key because little stumpy fingers. I gotta play where I can play on the board. But to me, Screaming for Vengeance is a really good album, but it has far more filler for my tastes than Creatures of the Night doesn't have any filler for me. They have one or two songs that I think are kind of, dialed in, but nothing that is as dialed in as Pain and Pleasure and Devil's Child. To me, Screaming for Vengeance is really about probably 4 songs, and that's Electric Eye, Screaming for Vengeance, and You've Got Another Thing Coming. The rest of it, Riding on the Wind. Yeah, I better add that one in.
That's a good one.
Better add that in.
That's a good one.
But Creatures of the Night is just a powerhouse. I mean, that's a V8 with every cylinder firing, and the production of it, whether it's the original 2 reverby 1982 or the remaster, it's just power. Ken?
Yeah, I mean, Screaming for Vengeance is my favorite Judas Priest album. And I think 8 out of the 10 songs are fantastic. 8 are really, really good. But it's not going to beat Creatures of the Night. Creatures of the Night was the big comeback album after The Elder. And song, styles of music that, they just turned the left turn with The Elder, and then they kind of righted themselves again finally on Creatures of the Night. And Creatures of the Night is great too. I would say 9 out of the 10 or 8 out of the 9 songs on Creatures are all fantastic. And like Mark said, the production of that really puts it over the top with the drums and everything else, the separation of instruments and so on. It's just great. So Creatures of the Night wins for me.
Yeah, who said Ram It Down sucks? Go listen to that again. I completely disagree with that.
Ram It Down is horrible.
It was Mark.
And
I can't believe it was Mark.
Yeah. There you go. By the way, my favorite Priest album is Stained Class by a mile. So
Which one? Sorry?
Stained Class.
Stained Class.
Oh, Stained Class.
Yeah.
That's good.
But I mean, my other guitar, I can play most of British Steel rhythm again, but fucking great albums. All right, let's move on into 1983. Ken, set it up.
So we have Lick It Up coming out after Creatures of the Night. And that is going to go up against Def Leppard's Pyromania.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that funny?
No, I don't think it's funny.
It is funny.
Those are.
I think it's a close call.
I think. It
What?
could be close.
Okay, I got to go first. Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
So this here is another example of a heavyweight against a middleweight, in my opinion, because Lick It Up is one of those records where I was a little disappointed. I mean, after Creatures of the Night, you were thinking that, if they were smart, they would have continued down that track, at least for another record, and they didn't. The sonics of it is not that good compared to Creatures. And let's face it, the back half of that album is pretty weak. Okay. On the 8th Day and all those songs are just not good. Okay. On that album. But Def Leppard's Pyromania, I mean, the only strike that album has, in my opinion, is I don't know why the hell, I do know why, but I just wish that Mutt Lange wouldn't have put those stupid drums on that he put on there, those electronic drums. If he would have kept it with the regular drum kit, okay, and just let Rick play it with the standard acoustic kit, that album would have been a classic, like a total 10 out of 10. I mean, the songs on this album, I mean, ironically, I listened to this album just like a day or two ago. I mean, everything from the opener, Rock Rock Till You Drop, Photograph, you know, there's everything on here is great. Stage Fright, Too Late for Love is one of the great opening songs. That guitar riff at the beginning is so good on that. You know, Die Hard the Hunter, one of the most underrated songs in my opinion there, Cal. I love that song. You know, and in Rock of Ages, I mean, that was all over Much Music here when that was out. I mean, this album to me is what reminds me of my teenage years. This album is such a great record. And, you know, while I think, you know, Lick It Up has some great songs on it as well. Exciter is good. Lick It Up is good. Not for the Innocent is really good. But it just doesn't stack up song to song to me. Not even close, in my opinion.
Okay. Okay.
Really? You guys are like, I think you guys need to get your hearing checked or something here.
Okay. Let me educate you. And this, just remember, Pyromania didn't do that well in Britain.
That doesn't mean anything.
Pyromania has just as much filler on it that you've just described, afflicting, Lick It Up. Billy's Got a Gun, Action Not Words, Coming Under Fire. There are several very good songs on that album, but Pyromania is a massive step down in the wrong direction from High and Dry, particularly because of the production and what Mutt did to their still two-armed drummer. He neutered the sound and the backbeat of that band, and a lot of that stuff could have been way better with High and Dry type drums, because if you listen to the production on High and Dry, then that's a massive check mark against it versus Lick It Up, which is a continuation and a slight smoothing. It's got the smoothing pedal applied.
Slight smoothing? The production is not anywhere near as good. Come on, man. It's not anywhere near as good.
It is still very good, and the songwriting and performance is extremely good on Lick It Up. Lick It Up for me by a mile, and it's a no-brainer. Lonnie.
Is there a producer that Mark does like?
I like Mutt Lange. I just wish that he wouldn't have just changed the drums. That's the only thing I said.
All right,
I love that album.
I'm just asking, and I'm not trying to pick on you, Mark. It's just
yes, you are.
Mark does have a problem with producers. You know, I think there's plenty of good songs on the second side of Lick It Up. I don't think that's a fair statement at all. I think A Million to One is an excellent song that's on the B side of,
and then what?
Of Lick It Up. And I think All Hell's Breaking Loose is fun too. I don't.
Okay, yeah, I like that song.
And Kiss songs ever. Okay, well, that's two of the songs. That's two of the five. We're a third of the way there. And I know Daniel's going to.
Let's go to the rest.
And I know that Daniel's going to tell me "Fits Like a Glove" is a pretty damn good song. Also, now we're over halfway there. That over half of these songs are pretty good. Now, I will give you that "Dance All Over Your Face" and "On the Eighth Day." Those are a little bit lesser, and they are
little,
but. However, as I let you talk, I didn't interrupt you, Mark, when you were talking. And also, as Julian pointed out, that there's plenty of filler on Pyromania as well. And if we're going to say two of the songs on the B side, on the second side of Lick It Up, aren't as good as the others, okay, that's fine. I'll give you that. But and Pyromania is good. There are good songs on there. But for me, the songwriting on Lick It Up is. Now, I wish the sound of it sounded more like Creatures, but I think the songwriting on Lick It Up is some of the best songwriting on almost any Kiss album. And for a lot of Kiss fans, it's their favorite non-makeup Kiss album. A lot of Kiss fans. It's not mine.
Not you.
Not me, and that's fine. But for me, it's definitely Lick It Up.
Nice. Mark, would you like to argue? No. Daniel.
No.
No, I'm not going to argue. Why? I already made my point.
It's your opinions. Well, I think Pyromania has a lot of good songs on it. Foolin' is one of my favorites. Rock of Ages is a cool song. Photograph is a cool ballad. But I have to second Lonnie. I think Lick It Up is a good album if you don't count the two last songs. they are the only fillers on Lick It Up. I can find plenty of fillers on the Def Leppard record. And also, I think the production, I mean, this is all that was wrong with the 80s. I mean, it's so dated. I think Lick It Up still holds up, but I think Pyromania, when I listen to Pyromania, some of the sounds doesn't sound good to me. It's so 80s. And even though there are some great songwriting on this album, I have to go with Lick It Up because, Fits Like a Glove, Exciter, especially Fits Like a Glove, but Exciter and A Million to One, I mean, those are 10 out of 10 songs, home runs, and there are a few on Pyromania as well, but Def Leppard is, the symbol of the 80s to me somewhat. Some of their albums are great, but I don't like the production. It's way overboard. It's 80s. This is not their worst sounding album, by the way, but they kind of dropped the ball on this one, I think. Still a lot of great songs.
Yeah, people seem to forget that.
Yeah, Foolin' is my favorite on this album. I think it's such a great song, but I'll have to go with Lick It Up.
All right, Ken. There's no tie to break it. Seems to be
no.
The world against Mark today.
I agree that Pyromania was a step down from High and Dry. High and Dry was like
that's a good
10 of 10 record. It was, from beginning to end. Pyromania had about 5 or 6 songs that are really, really good on it, and I like that album. But I think Lick It Up. Lick It Up is my favorite 80s. Probably my favorite 80s Kiss album.
What's interesting though about this, I'm finding, is that this is going to happen because this is a Kiss podcast. Everyone's going to, of course, vote the Kiss albums. If you really think of it logically, if you were to ask this in a general music podcast, I don't think you would get the same results here.
No, they don't have a clue. They don't have a clue.
No, because I'm telling you, like, for example, but look at if we were just to do it strictly on numbers alone, which I know is not the way to do it. Pyromania sold like 15 times what Lick It Up sold.
Doesn't matter.
Okay, but it doesn't matter to you because you're a Kiss fan. That's what I'm saying. If you were to do it,
but Mark, what was your favorite album of 1983? And go look at what was released that year: Mental Health, Peace of Mind, Born Again.
This is not my
Holy
favorite
Diver,
album.
Shout at the Devil, Melissa for Merciful Fate. You can't
it's
stop
not,
rock and roll.
Yeah, these are not my favorite records of '83. I'm just saying that right now, of course, it's making sense that Kiss is going to go on top because. You guys we're all diehard Kiss fans, but
you're also on the Kiss podcast, Mark.
Well, yeah, I know, but that's what I'm saying. So this is not surprising that they're going to outvote any of the other albums, even though realistically, probably in another sort of medium, it probably wouldn't happen.
Well, we could do it like this: is there any album from '83 that you would put above Lick It Up?
Yeah, Peace of Mind, easy.
Yeah. For you, it's no problem. But I'm thinking Lonnie, Ken, and Julian. I'd say I'd probably put Eliminator above Lick It Up. That's one of my favorite CC Top albums. But that's my pick.
I'd put Shout at the Devil above it.
Yeah, Shout at the Devil as well.
Sorry,
you would?
That's a good album.
Oh, hell yeah!
I would not.
I love Shout at the Devil.
But Ken,
it's good.
Album?
I might even put Melissa above it as well, for that matter.
That's a good album too.
Yeah. So anyway,
I might put Shout the Devil up there too. You also had Bark at the Moon up there. There's a lot of filler on Bark at the Moon though.
Shout at the Devil has some filler on it for me.
No, it doesn't.
I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, it does. But I Look It Up is a better album than Shout at the Devil. But that's just my opinion.
that's
I love Look It Up. Like I said,
you're entitled.
Like I said, Look It Up is my favorite Kiss album of the '80s.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of their best albums. For me, it is.
Great album.
That's how good it is. But that's me. Next.
Take us forward.
All right. We have
84.
next Animalize. Came out in 1984. And speaking of 1984, Van Halen
Didn't that come out
had the album named 1984. So we're putting up Animalize against Van Halen 1984. Some people don't like it, Van Halen 1984, because
Okay.
too much keyboards and stuff like that. Some people.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Mark.
Okay, I'll just get myself out of the way,
go.
and then you guys can go on about how great Animalize is for the next half an hour. Okay.
You don't know that. You do not know that.
And in my opinion, this again is not even close to in any regard. I mean, Eddie Van Halen, for example, just being Eddie Van Halen. I mean, I think Mark St. John should be cleaning his shoes at this point. Okay, so. I mean, the guitar playing is not even close to the same caliber of playing. I mean, Panama, Top Jimmy, Drop Dead Legs. There's so many great songs on this. House of Pain. I love that song. You know, even Jump.
Yeah,
I mean, and I've always been I'm not afraid to say on this podcast that I love keyboards. Behold, I have a keyboard here. I love keyboards. Okay,
except on the Destroyer.
Yeah, well, that's Destroyer. Piano. I don't love piano. Okay, so now, anyways, I'm saying that even though there's keyboards on there, which is just essentially 3 songs on there: I'll Wait, Jump, and the introduction, and that's it as far as keyboards on 1984. The rest of it to me is just fantastic. I love Panama. It's one of my favorite songs to still play on guitar. Every time I hear it, I bust out the guitar and play it all the time. And I just think that to me was one of the great songs on. I mean, Hot for Teacher as well. I mean, who didn't, when they hear that song, want to break out their guitar and start learning how to play that song?
It's drumsticks. That drum intro.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's such a great song. I mean, I've loved that album from beginning to end, and I never had an issue with the keyboards on it. So for me, Animalize has always been one of these records where, again, there's some great songs on it and there's some pretty weak songs on it. Okay, but I think that the ratio of good to bad on this is not even close, in my opinion. In this, I mean, you can argue again all you want that Animalize is far better now than 1984, but I think that it's not. And you guys can go on now.
Lonnie.
You guys know how just great Animalize is from start to finish.
Not from start to finish.
I'm waiting to hear it, Lonnie.
There are some highlights.
But no, I will agree with Mark that Van Halen 1984 is a superior record this time. I can't compare Animalize to 1984. It is a fantastic album and one of I think it's great from. I think 1984 is great from start to finish. There's very little filler on 1984, in my opinion, and there's a lot of filler on Animalize and a lot of throwaway crap songs, and especially Gene's songs. Gene's kind of checked out. Where I think Van Halen is really Panama, Hot for Teacher. Mark rattled off all the songs that are so good. I'm agreeing with Mark on this. It's 2-0 for Van Halen versus Animalize.
Wow.
Daniel.
1984. I love that song Panama, but I always enjoyed a rock band that had a singer that could belt it out. You know, I grew up listening to Dio, Kiss, Twisted Sister, and that sort of stuff. And the problem I always have had with early Van Halen is David Lee Roth's vocals. I can't go through an album with his vocals. I think they are too weak. I know he was a great frontman live, you know, doing all those kicks and splits and all that kind of stuff. But on record, I actually prefer Van Hager, you know, Sammy Hager. My favorite album is probably Balance.
I do too,
from, I don't know, 95
really?
Or something like that. Yeah, I really enjoy that album with, you know, what were the name of those songs?
I Can't Stop Loving You.
You really love it, don't you?
Yeah, I Can't Stop Loving You.
But the Wham Bam Amsterdam. Yeah, Wham Bam Amsterdam and all this stuff. and
Take
the
Me
sound
Back
of,
feeling.
and also the sound of the record, the really sharp guitars, and the keyboards are somewhat in the background. On this album, the keyboards are all over the place. I don't know, a song like Jump, it's so dated to me. I'm sorry, it's a classic, but kind of gets boring. Panama is a good song, but that's the only song that stands out for me from this album. And against, Heaven's on Fire, I've Had Enough, Into the Fire, Under the Gun, Thrills in the Night. And you do have some crap from Gene at the end of Animalize, much as you had on Lick It Up. But Burn Bitch Burn, such a cool riff. And I know you like that riff as well, Mark. But so I have to go with Animalize. But I'm a Kiss dude, but I think this album is so stuck in the 80s, while Animalize still sound kind of cool.
Okay.
Yes, it does. One vote for Animalize at least.
Ken?
Well, Animalize has the masterpiece of Burn Bitch Burn on it. It doesn't hold up at all to Van Halen 1984, which is a great album from beginning to end, really. Even though it was a shock when I first bought that, when it came out, that the keyboards and stuff, it was on a few of the songs, and it was kind of weird, but it was actually it worked and it was good. So yeah, the Van Halen album 1984 beats Animalize, probably pretty easily, really, for me. Animalize, again, yes, there was a couple of Gene songs, especially at the last couple at the end of the album, were to me always unfinished.
Yeah.
They were rushed type compositions, which they should have done a little bit more to it and tried to flesh it out a little more to make a better song of those two.
Yeah, Josh, thank you for flashing all those other great albums from 1984. I mean, it was a great time to be a rock fan, or to be a budding rock fan, and discovering music through all that stuff coming out, just a continuous stream. 1984 versus Animalize. Animalize does have some very, very good songs on it, without a doubt.
Sure.
But to put it up against 1984 for me is just impossible. 1984 does have Hot for Teacher. It does have Panama. It does have Top Jimmy. It does have, I love the keyboard synth, 1984 atmospheric. But then again, I like Intruder leading into Pretty Woman on Diver Down as well. Love both those albums. 1984 as a package is just a stunning piece of work that is starting to shift in a direction that wasn't Van Halen. The synth clearly was an area where they went with 5150, which I can't stand. I hate that album with a passion. I have nothing good to say about 5150. I actually threw the tape away after I bought it. And that had nothing to do with that guy who thinks he's a singer, because I do like OU812. So there is really no comparison. As much as I love Under the Gun, or I've Had Enough, Into the Fire, and Heaven's on Fire, you can't put those pound for pound against any of the songs that were. Yeah, keyboards. They're not the end of the world. Maybe, and that was a big problem with the band.
Songs.
But I mean, look what David Lee Roth comes back and does in '86. He goes off and does big band stuff basically for Crazy from the Heat, and then you've got stuff like Ladies' Night from Buffalo, Shy Boy. So he went in a completely different direction artistically as well from where they had been. They evolved. That's where the keyboards came in, and I gotta give them some credit for actually being willing to go there. I loved Jump when it came out. I really, really dug that song, and I loved it when friends would play it on a keyboard. It was a riff that was as powerful as a guitar riff at the time, which was a very rare thing, and to this day is a very rare thing to have something that is just so signature, coming from a motif like that. So, sorry, Van Halen. All right, I got everyone right.
Yep.
All right, take us into 85. This is going to be fun.
85, we have Kiss releasing Asylum, and going up Kiss Asylum. I know we have a couple of Asylum lovers here on this panel. going up against it is actually one that Daniel chose.
Ramirez?
No, Theater of Pain by Motley Crue.
Well, Daniel, get us started on that.
Yeah, Theater of Pain, 85. Motley Crue had released, I think it was in 83, they released their great opus. But by 85, they were deep into drugs and had a hard time getting it together. And it shows on the album. Even though it sold a whole lot of records over there in America, I think it's one of the crappiest Motley Crue albums ever released. I can't really listen to any of the songs. There's Smoking in the Boys' Room, such a silly, crappy song. I guess that was the lead-off single. And that's about all you remember from Theater of Pain. And so it doesn't stand a chance in hell against a great album like Asylum from Kiss. King of the Mountain, Tears Are Falling, Who Wants to Be Lonely. You can go on and on. It's such a strong album from Kiss. And against one of the weaker Motley Crue albums, it wins by a mile. So Asylum for me.
I'm going to go next because I bought these albums on the same day at Kmart in 1985.
Oh, really?
Because again, just like the videos for Asylum got me into that band, the videos for Motley Crue got me into that band. And back in the day, I loved those. Looking back on them, Theater of Pain is a weak-ass album. I've always said that if Theater of Pain had the guitar tone of Shout of the Devil, it would be a damn sight better, but the songs are still weak as hell and unfinished. City Boy Blues is cool. Louder Than Hell is cool.
That's pretty good.
But and Save Our Souls, but the most part, there's not much there. The image you thought was cool then, but 1985, and we've seen some of the other albums flashing by, Under Lock and Key, Invasion of Your Privacy. What else came out that year? Killing Is My Business. Last Command by Was. Hell, I take Last Command as well. Done with Mirrors is one of my all-time favorite Aerosmith albums. I'll take that over Theater of Pain any day. So Asylum, hands down. Just again, because of what it means to me, even though Theater of Pain technically means the same. Lonnie?
I think this is similar to a comparison a few ones back with the Def Leppard thing, where I think if you ask the general public, I think you're going to get the Motley Crue answer. But Asylum is a much better record than Theater of Pain. Theater of Pain is, outside of a couple, it is a lot of filler, where Asylum does have, the songs that Daniel just recited off. It's really, really good and a very underrated Kiss album. So for me, it's definitely Asylum also. I think that's probably going to be the consensus across the board for us. But I think, similar to what Mark was saying earlier, though, I think if you were asked a general public, I think that Theater of Pain would win. Are we a little biased? Sure. But I think we're right, though, too.
Theater of Pain's double platinum.
Oh, yeah.
Mark.
Right.
I think it's 4 times platinum.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that this is going to go without saying that I love Asylum. It is my favorite non-makeup Kiss album, period. I loved Motley Crue. When I was in high school, I thought Shout to Devil was the shit. You know what I mean? It was an awesome album. My friends and I had like the big star on our jean jacket in the back and stuff. So we were all about Motley Crue back in the day. And when that album came out, we were like looking at each other like, what the hell was going on? Because we were, even though Kiss kind of did the shocking change of attire as well with the neon and all that stuff and the weird fingerless gloves and all that stuff. What Motley Crue did, they went from really, black and looking cool to these really weird makeup and rouge on their face and all this stuff. It was really a bit of a shocker. And I mean, again, what Julian said about the songs, I have to echo completely. The songs are just terrible on that album. I mean, Smoking in the Boys' Room is a cover anyways. It's not even really their own song. But the song that, and Nikki Sixx had said this himself 100 times, thank God they wrote Home Sweet Home, otherwise that record would have flopped, because I think that's the only thing that saved them was that song. I mean, that song was everywhere and the video was played constantly on Much Music and MTV. So I think that's what put it over the top. And those guys were in La La Land on drugs at that point. So I remember reading his biography saying that he goes, if they didn't write that song, it's just like with Girls, Girls, Girls. If they didn't write, Kicks, what's it called? What's that opener again?
Kicks.
Not Kickstarter.
Wild
Side.
Wild Side, that's it. If they didn't write Wild Side and Girls, 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 that record would have flopped as well. So they always lucked out with like a song or two around this period. But the Kiss songs on this album are just fantastic from beginning to end. I mean, even the Gene stuff is really strong on this album.
Yeah.
I've said it before. I really like the songs that Gene did on this album. So to me, it's not really any competition. I think it's a pretty lucky album for Motley Crue in the sense that they survived it compared to a really, really well recorded record and well written record by Kiss.
I think Kiss remasters films says a good thing here, like Twisted Sister. Twisted Sister released Stay Hungry, such a great album, much like Motley Crue did with Shout at the Devil, and then they completely dropped the ball in the next album.
Oh, that was Come Out and Play for Twisted Sister. God, that was a pretty bad album.
Yeah, they had 1 or 2 songs, but it was awful.
Yeah. Ken, come over to the Asylum.
Oh, definitely. I'm going to enter the Asylum. Theater of Pain. I remember buying that when it came out, and I was so disappointed after. It was just those 2 songs. The rest of it was pretty much crap. I would say the Theater of Pain is kind of like Kiss's Animalize. I mean, even Animalize is better than Theater of Pain. Way better than Theater of Pain. The only reason that sold anything was the Home Sweet Home, and I'm sure a lot of people bought it and they got home and listened to it, and like they played it maybe a couple of times and that was it, because they skipped everything else. They just kind of went straight to the track of Home Sweet Home, because the rest of it was, I don't know, it was not good. It was not good. So I don't even have that in my collection of Motley Crue vinyl. So Asylum wins for me.
Well, I'm glad I'm glad Kiss didn't release an album in 1986, because nothing's touching Tesla's Mechanical Resonance for me. Nothing getting anywhere near that album. That is just one of the most perfect albums ever. Though I just did hear another album from 1986 for the very first time. Mark, Sword, Metalized, came out that year. That is absolutely stunning as well. All right, Ken, 87.
87, we have Kiss with their slick Crazy Nights album, and it's going up against a not so slick album, Appetite for Destruction by Guns N' Roses. And we have one big Guns N' Roses fan here on this panel. So Crazy Nights, these are 2 different types of albums, obviously, kind of like when we did Unmasked and Back in Black. Those are very, very different in sound and style. What would you pick?
Well, can I go first?
Yes.
Please.
So, I've never been the biggest fan of Crazy Nights, but it does have one of my favorite songs on there with Turn On the Night. I think it's a great song. I've always loved that song. And, again, this is one of these albums where if there was a different guy behind the mix of it, maybe it would have sounded different. But they went with Nevison as the producer because they wanted that sort of sound that, the Ultimate Sin and the Heart thing. They wanted to follow that success that he did with them. And, it didn't work out so well for them. They were, a year late with it, But Appetite for Destruction, I'll never forget when that album came out. I mean, that album reignited the love of Marshall amplifiers and Gibson Les Pauls, that album. And it brought back the whole sort of image that, you know, being a sort of grungy, beer drinking, whiskey drinking band that's, you know, half out of it sometime is cool again. You know, that whole image, you know, they were like the second coming of Aerosmith, or the second coming of like the early Rolling Stones. These guys, they were like back to basics rock. And when they played on stage, you didn't know what the hell was going to happen, if they were going to survive the whole show or not. You know, if Slash would be able to stay on his feet the whole night. And that's what was so cool about it back then. You know, that's, you know, because we were so used to overproduced and overpolished stuff by that point in the 80s, that to hear an album like Appetite for Destruction come out, it was like, wow. It was just unbelievable to hear that. I've always said that Appetite is a great album. I've always loved that album, and I even love Illusions as well. I think that they did some great stuff on there too. Maybe not as raw on those two albums, but I think Appetite for Destruction definitely re-kickstarted a whole generation of people back into raw, no bullshit rock and roll.
Okay, Lonnie. Guns N' Roses or Crazy Nights?
I don't think it's fair to put Crazy Nights up against one of the greatest albums of all time. And I don't think that many people will disagree by calling it that. And
so put it up against Love Is for Suckers. Is that what you're saying?
Right. I mean, it's not fair. It's so damn good from start to finish. And like Mark said, it's just sleazy blues based rock, and it was just a breath of fresh air in 1987 to what was popular. Not that what was popular was bad. It just took what was popular to a new direction, and it caused a lot of bands to want to imitate that because it was so big and so huge and so powerful, and still is to this day. I mean, you turn it on now, it still sounds as fresh and as good and as, I mean, just as big of a masterpiece now as it ever was. So you talk about two rock albums that are in completely different directions, and I'm sure this is what you guys talked about with Unmasked versus Back in Black at the beginning of the show, like two bands just going in completely different directions. One nailing it and one trying to chase a trend and falling well short of the mark with the production. So it's easily Appetite.
In 1987, I listened to Whitesnake more than I listened to Crazy Nights. I listened to Permanent Vacation more. I listened to The Cult Electric more. I listened to Back for the Attack, Dokken more. And Def Leppard Hysteria more. And to this day, I'll listen to this more than even Appetite for Destruction that year. For me, Appetite really hit the following year. So I've got to go with it because there's no way in hell, as much as I love Turn on the Night is not strong enough on its own to go up against Appetite for Destruction. That's just complete and utter lunacy. It almost would have been better to put Crazy Nights up against something. I mean, this is like Back in Black versus Unmasked again. It's like such an unbalanced matchup that it's unfair to pollute Appetite for Destruction's greatness with Kiss's Crazy Nights. So maybe it should be going up against Frelly Comet. But that isn't going to be a very easy one either. So Appetite for Destruction. Daniel.
I think the main thing with Appetite for Destruction was that it felt real. You know, for a long time, bands tried to be someone they were not, had these big hairstyles and everything. And when Guns N' Roses came along with this record, it felt real. They were meaning business. And you could see it in the live shows. You could hear it on the records. They were all in. They were real. Much like the early Norwegian black metal scene, if you remember. Then the expression real was a thing. You had to believe in like Satan, and you had to burn the churches, and it all went wrong and overboard. But it almost went overboard for the drummer in Guns N' Roses. He almost killed himself on drugs, you know, living the rock and roll dream. So For some time, at one point, I thought this band won't last because they are really doing it. That they're not acting like most of the other bands. They had all these chicks in the videos, but you kind of understood that they were paid to be there. But Guns N' Roses felt real, and it came from the heart, and it was raw. And I guess it was the jab that opened up for Nirvana and all the other bands. It was the jab, and then Nirvana was the right hand that completely knocked out the 80s scene, and it was all over. But this Guns N' Roses album is one of the best of the 80s, of course, and original, and so you have to go with that album.
I wish I'd seen Guns N' Roses back in the day with Zodiac Mind Warp opening for them, or Guns N' Roses opening for Aerosmith. Ken,
I saw that.
Did.
I did. I saw that one. Them open for Aerosmith. So anyway, that was great. So yeah, Crazy Nights was a mistake. Another mistake. Following trends. I think it was because of Paul Stanley's jealousy of John Bon Jovi and how the success of their music was, and he wanted to try to get that same success, and that was a wrong, bad decision to change the styling and try to go away from what worked on Asylum. It was just a big mistake. And Guns N' Roses, I remember hearing "Welcome to the Jungle" for the first time on my car radio. I'm like, I just sat up in my seat and was like, what the heck, man? Who is this? This is great, And once I heard that it was, Guns N' Roses, I immediately went out and bought the record. And it was great from, beginning to end, like Lonnie said. So, it was dangerous. It was raw. It was just great rock and roll. And Kiss was just not great rock and roll. There's a couple of good songs on there, as we know, catchy tunes, but it's not Kiss. That's not Kiss. If you think about it, that album's not Kiss, and it shouldn't be Kiss. It should be someone else, like Bon Jovi or whatever.
Well, no, it was Kiss. I mean, there's lots of elements of Kiss in it. It was just no matter how good it was, then it wouldn't have mattered. It just after it was just much more stronger. Yeah.
It was Paul Stanley's decision to do that. Gene didn't want to go that route. It was Paul Stanley's decision, and that's another case. I blame Paul for some of their directions that they've done over the past. But yeah, it's not a true Kiss album in the sense, dangerous hard rock. It's not that.
I love the way Gene started ice skating when the keyboardist started playing during sound checks for Kiss. That was so funny.
Oh, moving on from Appetite for Destruction, which is Sonic Viagra, to Hot in the Shade.
Okay. Hey, Hot in the Shade, which everyone
I can't believe you put this up against that album.
Yeah, this one I chose. I mean, the last one was, I think, Daniel's picked the last couple. But this one, I put it up against Aerosmith, Pump, that album, Hot in the Shade. It's hard to put it up against anything really Hot in the Shade that year, to tell you the truth. But might as well, I thought I'd choose Aerosmith since, Julian.
You could put it up against White Lions, The Big Game. It would have a chance there.
It could have done something, but
yeah, but nobody cares about that.
Anyway, Aerosmith, Pump.
Daniel.
Well, Aerosmith, they were on the comeback trail, and this was a big hit over here. That album was played all over the place. It wasn't the same case when it comes to Hot in the Shade. I think I missed when it was released, actually, because there was no media, no one cared. And when I heard it, I thought, what the heck is this? And much like, I think Mark mentioned that the ballad saved Motley Crue, Home Sweet Home. That was the case when it comes to Kiss in 1990 when they went on tour. The ballad Forever's really opened the gates for them in order to be able to tour. But that's not enough to make a great album. There are a few songs that are pretty cool. Rise to It, Betrayed. But there's a whole lot of filler, and there's like no consistency through the album. It's all over the place. It's a mishmash. And, you just have to listen to the first song on Pump, and it beats Hot in the Shade. Steven Tyler belting out Young Lust, such a great song. And then, of course, you have a few great hits on that album as well. Janie's Got a Gun is a great song, of course. I guess my favorite Aerosmith song is from the early records, the one he plays. What's it called? He plays the piano.
Dream On.
Yeah, Dream On. Probably top 10 song of all time. Such a great song, and still to this day, it blows my mind when he does that live. I remember seeing him and actually Slash from Guns N' Roses doing a rendition of that one a few years back, and it was about the best thing I've ever seen. So Aerosmith's Pump beats Hot in the Shade by a mile.
Mark.
Yeah, I mean, I love Pump. I mean, that album, when I first heard it, I thought was fantastic. And I think we had an episode once when we talked about the albums that had the best 1-2 songs on it, like opener and then second track. I mean, you can't argue that this album has probably one of the best 1-2 punches with, Young Lust and Fine. I mean, I think that's, and then right after that, you get Love in an Elevator. I mean, come on. Already, it's like such an amazing record. And the thing I love about Pump is that they had the urgency again in their playing and their writing. I mean, you could tell that they knew that they had to, show that Permanent Vacation wasn't a fluke, and that they had to step up, and they really did so on this album. And I'll just end with this. If you want to love this album even more, I highly suggest you go on YouTube and look up The Making of Pump. There's a great documentary on it, and I've loved that documentary, and just watching it shows how much blood, sweat, and tears they put into making that record, and how many arguments they had and fights with everybody from their A&R guy to their producer to within the band itself. So if you love that album, check it out. It's really, really good.
Yeah. So we have Guns N' Roses to thank for Pump, because they wouldn't have made Pump without Appetite for Destruction. Without a doubt, you hear what they're doing with Permanent Vacation, and then you hear the shift and the similarities, but also the sonic differences, and also more guitars, lots more guitars. And that's a direct reaction to Izzy and Slash. Hot in the Shade, I'd listened to an awful lot in 1989. I think probably between that, Pump, and someone did mention Great Radio Controversy, were 3 albums that were in play continuously. But the problem with Hot in the Shade is it's got some very good songs, but the production just is not there. So it can't really go up against an album that just has all the fat trimmed off it, like Pump. Pump is so refined. They were cutting shit off that. They had A, B, and C lists, and obviously I've got the Volume 2 of Aerosmith coming out, which talks about that next year. It doesn't compete because it wasn't trimmed. Hot in the Shade, circumstances dictated that is what it was. And back in the day, in 1989, I loved having 15 new Kiss songs to enjoy. But I got to go with Pump, because that's just a really good reaction to being scared shitless by Guns N' Roses. Lonnie?
Yeah, it goes back to my point. Julian just backed up my point about Guns N' Roses, that it changed music and it changed what bands wanted to do. And Pump is one of the perfect examples of that. Like Julian said, you listen to Permanent Vacation, listen to that. I mean, they're both good albums, but very, very obvious that Aerosmith went a different direction for the follow-up to that. And there are so many great songs on that. And I think we did a Look It's Rock and Roll about Pump, didn't we? I know we did one about Get a Grip. I think we might have done one about Pump also.
Yeah, we did Pump, yeah.
Yeah.
So
But I mean, What It Takes and My Girl and Other Side, JD's Got a Gun, Love It in an Elevator. I mean, Young Lost. I mean, man, that album is just stacked with good songs. And Hot in the Shade is not stacked with good songs. It's just stacked with songs. So it's very easy to tell you which is the better album, which one would rather listen to, even though this is a Kiss podcast, like we said earlier. I think Pump definitely wins this one. I mean, you can. It's interesting going through these lists of what Kiss was doing versus what other bands were doing. In the '80s, but Pump is far superior.
Yep. Ken.
yeah, Pump I liked a lot. The production was great. I preferred the music of Permanent Vacation. I just wish that Permanent Vacation was produced like Pump was. It would have been even better. But Hot in the Shade is too many demo type songs. Not a number of songs are they're just okay songs. They're not, nothing fantastic about a lot of it. There's a few there that are really good, but then the rest is could be filler. Again, that was an album that was way too long, way too many songs. It should have been cut down and worked on more, and then produced right. It might have gotten better, and it probably still wouldn't have beaten Pump. Even fixing it. So yeah, Aerosmith Pump wins on that one.
Yeah, and someone suggested we should have put Dr. Feelgood up against Hits, but I think the same applies to them. And I find Dr. Feelgood a horrendously overrated album in hindsight, other than, Kickstart My Heart, really.
Sure.
Yeah, I just, it has not aged well for me, and I listened to it a lot back in the day. But you know what, with Aerosmith and Kiss, Aerosmith had two careers. Done with Mirrors is the same as the debut. Get Your Wings is kind of the equivalent of Permanent Vacation. Pump is the equivalent of Toys, and then obviously you go forward to Rocks and Get a Grip, and that's how I kind of look at all those. That you have to do one to get to the next. Kiss wasn't going in any direction. Kiss was all over the place, kind of like a drowning man, unfortunately, during the 1980s, trying to catch a hold of this thread or that thread, and just trying too hard in many cases and coming up short. When you look at the stuff that they do with Desmond Child, and then what Desmond Child does with other bands way more successfully, Desmond Child made Bon Jovi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, I've got a lot of respect for Kiss in the 1980s, that they kept trying and trying into the 90s until they could play that reunion card. And respect primarily to Paul Stanley for driving that car through all that years. It's very easy to put any of those albums up against anything that we've picked today to measure them against, and to have them fail in those tests. But I'm really grateful that we've got all those albums to go back to, because they're part of my soundtrack, and there are songs on each of them that I really do love. All right.
For sure.
90 minutes. Mark, you got me to do a long episode at the end of the year when I said I wasn't even sure that we're going to do an episode this week, but there we are. That's a whole bunch of, kind of silly matchups in some ways, but it's also a good way just to look back at all those albums again. I want to thank everyone who's taken the time to join us and to chime in with your contributions for other great albums that were released in those years. Go back. If you haven't heard some of those albums, go check them out. There's music today may not be great for you, but there's a whole world of old music to go and discover or rediscover. And that's the great thing about it. All you got to do, just push play. Nice little Aerosmith reference there.
Nice one.
All right, so that's it. Happy New Year to everyone. We hope to see you back in 2024. We're going to keep doing this as long as it's still fun. Stay safe, be happy. But for now, from Daniel, Lonnie, Mark, Ken, and myself, and everyone else who's been on the show, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for spending time listening to the KissFAQ podcast today. All sales are final. There are no refunds. If you'd like, look us up on Facebook or come over to the KissFAQ message board and discuss the topic we broadcast today. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes, Spreaker, or wherever you've listened to the show. We hope you'll join us again.